PR Connections Radio presents.
So, what's next for your Vegas Golden Knights? And on this episode of Vegas Hockey Hub here on PRConnectionsRadio.com, the voice of new media, I'm your host, Ian Rickelli. And we are going to be taking a look into the future and what this upcoming season can be involving your Vegas Golden Knights. So this is going to be a real good episode, and we're going to have a lot to go over on this show. Take a quick second, shout out our social media pages at Vegas Hockey Hub on all major platforms, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, at Vegas Hockey Hub. So if you want to keep up to date with everything we're doing on this show, I highly recommend doing that. So the Vegas Golden Knights and the impact of what's coming up for Vegas, this conversation has to start with the biggest name the Vegas Golden Knights are attached to. This show cannot happen if we don't talk about Mitch Marner. I mean, it's been for months and weeks and days. I mean, we have seen so many articles that have been written about Mitch Marner. What if he comes to the Vegas Golden Knights? What happens if Mitch Marner joins the Vegas Golden Knights organization? So let's talk about it, shall we? Now, with Mitch Marner, this is going to be a player who, you look at the price tag, you're going to see that $12 million annual value, AAV, and you're going to ask yourself, is he worth it? Is that $12 million going to be justified to the Vegas Golden Knights? He going to provide that value to Vegas with the amount of money he is going to get? Is that 8-year deal going to be enough for the Vegas Golden Knights for ROI, the return of investment? For casual fans, you're going to be asking yourself, is this a good move? Will Vegas get beneficial on this move with Mitch Marner? Well, for diehard fans and for people who just watch hockey, you'll know that Mitch Marner is definitely at least a top 20 player in the National Hockey League. This is someone in Mitch Marner who has scored 90 to 100 points in 3 of the last 4 seasons that he was out in Toronto. It is someone who, in the last 4 seasons, his worst goal-scoring performance was 26, and that was the season before this one. I mean, he's coming off a 102-point campaign with the Toronto Maple Leafs, and that's not even including the dozen points he had in the playoffs with Toronto. So he's a contributor in the postseason. Over a dozen points in 2 of the last 3 years that Toronto went to the playoffs. He's someone who, like I said, 95-plus points in 3 of the last 4 years. But what value does Mitch Marner provide in terms of special teams? Well, on the power play, he could be on your power play 1. Mitch Marner, defensively and offensively, is very skilled. His talent can be displayed on the power play. And if I had to make a prediction here, you put him on the first power play line with Jack Eichel, with Tomas Hertl, Shea Theodore as your defenseman on that power play line. You're going to see a good amount of goals that's going to be scored on the power play, Mitch Marner being on that line. And then on the penalty kill, you can even plug him in on the penalty kill 1, PK1. And he could be alongside Jack Eichel and Brayden McNabb and whatever defenseman you want to plug in there. Could be Theodore, could be Hanifin, could be whatever defenseman you want to plug in alongside Brayden McNabb. But on terms of the penalty kill, if you're in a 5-on-4 situation, having someone who has received Selke votes and someone who is a two-way capable forward in Mitch Marner that will pay off in terms of massive dividends for your Vegas Golden Knights. So Mitch Marner coming to Vegas, the question really isn't what if he comes to Vegas. It's more about what happens when he does get to Vegas. And that's really the main question that so many people have asked for months on end. And those jersey sales. Oh, those jersey sales, day one. Are you kidding me? The amount of money that the Armory and the Arsenal and the Vegas Golden Knights team store, Sports Town, like any sports memorabilia site in Las Vegas, day one, Mitch Marner. Oh, man, so much money. But overall, let's get back to what we're talking about here. So Mitch Marner going to be on that first line with the Vegas Golden Knights. I mean, you're not going to be paying him all that money just to put him on the middle six now. We're not going to go into that insane territory. But here's what I do know. And this is a mock-up of what the lines could be. This is not official, all right? I'm putting this out here. This is what a mock line could be with the Vegas Golden Knights. So Ivan Barbashev and Jack Eichel, they have been on that first pairing for the last 2 seasons. They seem to have gelled well when Barbashev and Eichel have been there. Now, it was, Jonathan Marchessault for, on that first season. Mark Stone came over. He was on that first line this past year. Mitch Marner being plugged in there does make a lot of sense. Now, if you're someone who wants to make a valid argument that Pavel Dorofeyev could be bumped up to line 1, I'm not going to dispute that. I'm not going to disagree with you. You have some valid arguments there. But based off of what we've seen in terms of continuity and chemistry, Barbashev, Eichel, Marner being on that first line. Second line, there is so much you could do here, but Pavel Dorofeyev, William Karlsson, and Mark Stone would seem to make the most sense. Now, Mark Stone and injuries, that is something we could talk about way later on in the future. William Karlsson, he just came off an injury-plagued season in 24-25. But if we're entering the 25-26 season and you're trying to put the best lines possible, having 2 veterans be alongside a breakout star in a 24-year-old in Pavel Dorofeyev. Now, I have heard arguments that Tomas Hertl, Pavel Dorofeyev, and Mark Stone would be that second line. And if that is, fantastic. On the third line, Brett Howden, Tomas Hertl, and Riley Smith. I mean, Riley Smith coming back, original misfit. So many fans love Riley Smith. The fans like him. The organization has always, had positive praises for Riley Smith. And with him being a good veteran to have in the locker room, teaming him up with Brett Howden, who had a career high last year, really kind of to prove himself in that organization. And then Tomas Hertl, who has been a good power play guy to have for the Golden Knights. And the fourth line, there's so much you could do here. Brandon Saad coming back. He's a good veteran, solid contributor, someone who could pass the puck around, score half a dozen goals, maybe even a dozen goals in a full 82-game season. Cole Schwindt, he is a player that a lot of people have sung high praises for. They really like what he can provide value for. Now, I'm not going to say that he is going to be a definitive day one starter for the Vegas Golden Knights, but for line 4, I could see that being a reality. Keegan Kolesar, he is, a leader in the locker room, kind of building himself up over the last couple of years. But overall, this lineup, a lot's going to change. There's going to be some things that are going to move around. But overall, this is just a rough draft, kind of what a possible lineup could be on the forward side. Now, defensively, this one is a little bit more on the nose. I think this could be defensively something that could end up happening. I mean, Noah Hanifin and Shea Theodore, with the massive extensions that they got this past season, they are being paid to be first defensive pairings, to essentially be your defensive 1A and defensive 1B type of players. That's what Shea Theodore is being, and that's what Noah Hanifin is being paid for. Brayden McNabb and Zach Whitecloud, we have seen this pairing happen before off and on with the Vegas Golden Knights. And Brayden McNabb defensively is your best defenseman on this Vegas Golden Knights team. And Zach Whitecloud, what he kind of doesn't do offensively, he more than easily kind of makes up defensively. Now, third pairing, I could highly see this changing, and depending on if any future trades happen or if they continue to sign more defensemen, Ben Hutton, I think that he's somebody that they could maybe even try to move potentially with the Vegas Golden Knights. Kaden Korczak, he has really earned his status, when it comes to the Vegas Golden Knights. So for Kaden Korczak, I can see him being on that third pairing, and then whoever they want to have be alongside him. Questionable about Hutton, but that's where we put him at right now. And then goalie-wise, you have Adin Hill and you have Akira Schmid. And Akira Schmid and Adin Hill is that when it comes to those two, they paid all that money to Adin Hill to be their starting goalie for the long-term future, and he is going to be that way, regardless if you like it or not, for the next 6 years. And then Akira Schmid, when they made that trade the last offseason, they're going to give him that chance as the backup goalie. Now, there always could be something that changes. Okay, they could try to bring in a veteran goaltender to be a backup in free agency. Obviously, there's a lot of things that could, happen there. And then Akira Schmid goes down to Henderson. But for right now, Hill and Schmid are your goaltenders in terms of the Vegas Golden Knights. Now, looking after all of that, the second question, and this is the good news for Vegas. All right, Mitch Marner joining Vegas and the impact there, that is the number one thing that is on what's next for Vegas. But the way I've always learned how to handle good news and bad news is you treat it like a sandwich. All right, you go good news first, bad news second, and then you end with some try positive on your way out. Good, bad, good. So let's start with the good news for the Vegas Golden Knights. And being what's next for Vegas, the good news is that this roster is mostly intact. Okay? There is going to be some changes to the middle six. There's going to be some changes to the bottom six. There's going to be one or two defensemen that are going to come in and out. But overall, if you compare the roster from 24-25 and you're going to look at it in the 25-26, I'm going to say it's going to be about 4 or 5 changes. But overall, the main core is going to stay intact. You still have Pavel Dorofeyev. You still have Jack Eichel. Your captain, Mark Stone, is still here. William Karlsson, him being that original misfit, still a day one guy. He's going to be there. That is Vegas in terms of their forwards. Tomas Hertl, he's still intact. Defensively, Theodore, Hanifin, McNabb, Whitecloud. That 4 is still intact for the Vegas Golden Knights. You still have a decent amount of players when you won that Stanley Cup in 2023 that after 3 seasons, is going to be the 3rd season removed from it, the Vegas Golden Knights still have a considerable amount of those guys here on the roster. That's good news. And then the other good news is the Alex Pietrangelo salary cap situation. Now, with the Vegas Golden Knights, you bring in Mitch Marner, and there is all this talk about the Vegas Golden Knights are $10 million over the salary cap. Oh my gosh, the Vegas Golden Knights are going to be so over the salary cap because you bring in Mitch Marner. Stop. I want to explain something to all the people who use Puckpedia or use any of these websites that use the salary cap situation. I want to break this down real quick. Yes, the Vegas Golden Knights are over the salary cap. Mitch Marner coming over and the amount of money they're going to give him, Vegas will be over. Absolutely. But that is if Alex Pietrangelo is not accounted for. If Alex Pietrangelo and his salary is still a part of it, then yes, Vegas is over the salary cap. I agree with you there. But then the moment and the millisecond that you take Alex Pietrangelo and you put him on long-term IR and he doesn't play for the year, that takes the Vegas Golden Knights to just a little over $1 million in cap space. I also want to remind you that with just a little over $1 million in cap space, that backup goalie situation, it could be resolved. Depending on how all that goes, maybe they want to, call up Carl Lindbaum if they think he's ready. Maybe the Vegas Golden Knights try to go get a veteran goalie for just $1 million on a one-year deal, essentially an Ilya Samsonov situation from the year before. When it comes to Vegas, the salary cap, it's not an issue with Pietrangelo on long-term IR. It only becomes a problem if he's not on long-term IR. Because I've seen the depth chart of Hanifin and Pietrangelo, of Theodore and McNabb, and then you have Whitecloud and you have Korczak. Of course, I've seen that depth chart. But if Pietrangelo's not there and he is out due to injury, Vegas will be okay, salary-wise. So that is the good news for Vegas, is that you put one player on long-term IR who has a cap hit of just under $9 million. That makes it better for Vegas. Now, the bad news. The bad news for the Vegas Golden Knights is the lack of future first-round picks. I understand there's going to be some people who are going to see this as a moot point. All right, Vegas wants to win now, you say. All right, the Vegas Golden Knights, they want to win now. They really don't care about draft picks, right? They don't really care about all of that. Why would they? They want to win now. But when you are in win now mode, your farm system is towards the bottom of the league. And I do appreciate Puckpedia, by the way. They are my reference for this. But 2025, no first-round pick. 2026, no first-round pick. It's not until 2027 and then 2028 the Vegas Golden Knights have a first-round pick. And the reason why this is because the Vegas Golden Knights traded them away for Tomas Hertl and for Noah Hanifin, respectfully. All right. Individually, they gave up those first-round picks to bring in a great power play guy in Tomas Hertl, and then turned that around, and they went and spent a first-round pick, and they gave that up to bring in Noah Hanifin, and those are both, by the way, at the same trade deadline about a season and a half ago. So, overall, the Vegas Golden Knights, what they're going to try to address is they're in win now mode, and they're really not focusing on what's next in terms of prospects. As a matter of fact, when it comes to prospects, I can even show you what I'm talking about. In terms of prospects right here for your Vegas Golden Knights, I mean, it's relatively weak. I mean, outside of Matthew Chatterford, him being in the AHL, him being in Henderson, he does have some potential at 20 years old. Based off of certain draft picks they have made, they had a mid-level draft pick, in recent years. But, I mean, Pavel Moisevich, him being the 20-year-old Russian goalie that they have to bring over from the KHL, Cameron Whitehead, he has spent time in juniors. We'll see if he eventually comes over and plays an everyday role in the AHL, him being an everyday type of guy. Trevor Connolly is their top prospect. He is their first-round pick from 2024, which is the draft, from a year ago. And depending on his potential, is there a chance that Trevor Connolly makes the NHL roster at the end of 25-26. It all depends on injuries. It all factors into his development. But Trevor Connolly has more or less been the only prospect that I have heard the Vegas Golden Knights really even remotely talk about. Matthew Chatterford, a little bit. Cameron Whitehead, I know that there's somebody who's a goalie fan. She definitely, talks about all the goalies there, so I know she'll probably cover that. But overall, Connolly is really your marquee prospect. And it's just going to be so interesting to see what happens there. But this is why the Vegas Golden Knights, when you look at most prospect rankings, Vegas is like in the 20s. Now, I have to mention this, and I will point this out again. This is bad news if you value farm systems. If you think that a farm system is so valuable to an organization, you're going to consider this bad news. But if you don't, and you're just in win now, and you believe that the Vegas Golden Knights don't need all these prospects and they're going to be fine without them, then you're just going to shrug this section off. So after all of that, let's get into the good news once again. What holes does Vegas have on the roster? Is there any holes that they need to address in terms of the current depth chart, in terms of the current roster? Well, I know some people are going to say that the Vegas Golden Knights are going to be missing at their center position. Their center position is not as strong compared to different teams. And I sit here and say it depends on who you put at center. Because I have to remind you, the Vegas Golden Knights technically have 7 centers on the roster. All right, they have 7 players who can play the center position. But Jack Eichel, that's your number 1 center. All right, everyone knows that. He's your superstar from last year. He's your MVP. That is who the Vegas Golden Knights are counting on as your number 1 center. Okay? Ivan Barbashev, he's a winger right now, but he can be a center if he has to, but he can be one if needed. Tomas Hertl has been a center for Vegas, but they can transition him and move him over to a wing. William Karlsson has been a center, but they've moved him to a wing during the playoffs. We saw that. Brett Howden has played center at various times throughout the last couple of years with the Vegas Golden Knights. We've also saw that when it came to Cole Schwindt, he played center and he played wing in this past year. So there's been a handful of guys who have been at the center position with the Vegas Golden Knights that are on this roster. And then previously, in past seasons, obviously Nicholas Waugh has been at the center position at times. He's been at the wing, but he's also been at the center. And you also have talked about players who have been at the center in the past historically. You even go back to the Tomas Noseks and the Pierre-Edouard Bellemare and all of those guys at the center. But what am I saying? Okay? What am my main point when it comes to what holes Vegas has on the roster? I'm going to say that once you get past the top 3 centers, which for right now is Eichel, Hertl, Karlsson, the 4th line center could be a weakness, depending on who it is. And depending on if Nicholas Waugh could be a replacement there. So overall, for Vegas, 4th line center, that could be an issue. Also depending on who is at the left wing for Vegas. Because I do want to remind you that when it comes to the current left wing situation, Barbashev, Howden, Saad, Dorofeyev, there's going to be a multitude set of guys that are going to be at the left wing. does that open a spot for Trevor Connolly towards the middle or end of the season if there is a left wing that goes down due to injury? So I'm going to say on the bottom 6, there is a potential for a left wing and potential for a center as a weakness. Defensively, they have about 9 defensemen. All right, they have about 10 defensemen on this team. Okay? They're going to have probably 7 defensemen on opening night. I wouldn't be shocked if they somehow go back to an 8-man rotation like they did this past year. All of this really depends on if they go out and get another defenseman, because there's been rumors about that. And then the most obvious hole that Vegas has on the roster is the goaltending, and that is the backup role. Who's going to be behind Adin Hill? Currently, it is Akira Schmid. And my 5th and final point, because we're kind of getting towards the end of the show here. Will Kelly McCrimmon make another trade? Will your general manager in Kelly McCrimmon make another trade with this Golden Knights roster? Because defensively, is the Vegas Golden Knights roster content with the current 6-man? With the 6 defensemen the Vegas Golden Knights have right now, could they go and get one of these players I'm going to mention? Could they call up the Buffalo Sabres and inquire about Bowen Byram, who is an RFA? Could the Vegas Golden Knights go to the Calgary Flames and say, hey, Rasmus Andersson has 1 year left on his deal. He'll be a free agent the year after. What's it going to take to acquire a Rasmus Andersson? Now, if they did that, that's going to be about, I think, $4 million that you're going to have to add to the salary cap. That's going to cause a pinch. I'm aware of that, but still. Chicago Blackhawks, they have a young, upcoming, guy in his early to mid-20s in Wyatt Kaiser. And I don't think that it would cost too much to go get him in terms of future capital. So you have Bowen Byram, you have Rasmus Andersson, Wyatt Kaiser out there in Chicago. I mean, there is plenty of guys that you could get defensively that the Vegas Golden Knights would want to make a trade for if possible. Now, goalie-wise, I'm not going to go with the usual suspects, okay? I'm not going to talk about the veteran goalies of the world, all right? I'm not going to talk about the Freddie Andersons, okay? I'm not going to go there. All right, I'm not going to talk about the Ville Hussos, okay? When it comes to Vegas Golden Knights, I don't think they're going to spend a lot of time trying to trade for a backup goalie when it comes to Vegas. All right, if anything, they're going to try to look at whoever's available, and they'll try to sign one if they have to. So this is, just what's next for the Vegas Golden Knights. I just want to take this episode, talk about what is in the future for Vegas. And obviously the main one was Mitch Marner, and, what's the plan for Mitch Marner and the Vegas Golden Knights, because that impact is going to affect Vegas a lot offensively and defensively. And, I just wanted to sit here for a minute, talk with everybody. Now, if you have any questions, if we have a chance to do a Q&A next episode, we could do that. But I actually want to sit here and say, if we get enough questions, we'll do a Q&A. But yeah, this is just an episode. I just wanted to talk about this for a minute. Go to our social media pages at Vegas Hockey Hub and go to at PR Connections Radio and upload everything there. And, overall, I'm going to say when it comes to the Vegas Golden Knights, this is going to be very interesting to see what happens in 25-26. I'm very curious what the opening night roster is going to look like. When the time actually comes and the puck drops, who is the 23-man roster for Vegas? So, that's going to be very interesting. I'm really looking forward to it. And this was Vegas Hockey Hub. I am your host, Ian Rakelli. And until next time, go Knights, go, and have a good one now.
PR Connections Radio thanks you for watching this podcast. Check out more episodes of this show and our others at prconnectionsradio.com.